All right. Well, welcome to, I guess this is episode 35 of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. And today we're going to talk about one of the 5 areas in our flywheel worldview. But just as a reminder to everybody, this is a flywheel that Jim and I built a few years ago now, and we've just kind of made adjustments and added to it. But if you picture a circle with concentric circles going out from it, and kind of like dropping a stone in a pond, and that makes all those circles. It's you radiate out from the middle of this circle, and in the middle is the self and self-awareness, self-accountability, self-control. Jim created a list, I think, of 20 some odd self hyphen words that we used in the last video. But the 5 areas are in no particular order: our health, both mental and physical; our profession, either as an employee or an entrepreneur; money and how we think about money. Do we have a mindset that's scarcity oriented or abundance oriented? Then there are people, the relationships in our lives, and we split those into men and women. And finally, what we're going to talk about today is worldview. And we believe that our worldview is caused from two areas. One is our childhood, how we were brought up, where we were brought up, who brought us up. And then the other one is our political positions that we form later on in life as we become young adults. So, Jim, I'll toss it over to you. We got a surprise for everybody today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about today. First of all, I'm pleased to announce our guest today is Carl Lane. Carl and I go back many years. We'll get into that later in the podcast. But the other thing great about Carl is you're going to find out not just a great guy, an impressive man, very impressive, but also a listener. So he recently he was visiting his father here, and we got together, and I didn't realize this, but he had listened to all the episodes, and so really enjoyed it. So that's going to be fun because, we have somebody that really understands the concepts in that. But Carl, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So proud and happy to be here.
Yeah. So Carl, what I thought I'd do is we're going to be talking a lot about you, but I thought I would do a quick lap around the flywheel. And like Mark said, no particular order, but let's start off real quickly. I'll just start off with profession because that is unique. We break it up in these 2 areas, right? You're either an entrepreneur, kind of what Mark and I are doing, or you're an employee of some kind with either a large corporate company or government. But you're unique in that you've had your own business. But right now, tell us a little about what you're doing and even your entrepreneurial past.
Right.
Yeah.
So I work for a company called Bennett in logistics. So I've been in logistics now off and on for about 25 years.
Yep.
So I have agents all over the U.S. Right now. Pretty much most of them are pocketed here in the Southeast. So
Yep.
I kind of handle that area, but I travel all over, and they move freight, goods and services all over the U.S. So been with this company now about 2 years. Love it. Love the people. Family owned. Again, being in the industry for a while, I was on the corporate side of things before, on the public side, public company, and big difference, right? On the public company, their commitments to its shareholders. On the private, we got a little bit more leeway that we can work with the customer. So I'm excited about my position and doing well with it. So
that's cool. I remember years ago we had a quick conversation. I mentioned something about logistics. Everything's logistics, right? Everything.
Yes,
it affects us in every way, whether it's world. Logistics brings stuff from all over the world, but everything is logistics. So it's cool. And just to see you over the years, thrive in that industry, clearly a domain expert and leader in your field. So that's cool. Yeah. And then on the entrepreneur side, again, just quickly, because we have a lot of stuff to cover, but what you had your own stuff going.
Yes, I trained athletes full time.
That's
so
right.
Some of the top athletes in the world were clients of mine: baseball, football, basketball. So I had a love for the sport. I always believed that you can raise your IQ in the sport, and that was great. And just kind of being a student, I noticed that as guys got older, they were still able to compete. So again, I've always watched X's and O's. So I have a son that I thought was fairly decent.
I'm going to come back to that. So hold
yeah,
on
so
that.
I did some things with him.
But you basically work with professional athletes. I mean, you have from all levels, right? Yeah.
Yes.
From
Hall
youth
of Fame players
all the way to the best there is. Yeah.
number one overall pick. A lot of those guys came through me. So
That's very cool.
really love that. Did that for about 6 years. Did a bunch of work with Nike. When
Yeah.
Nike started their Spark, I ran their Southeast for them.
Wow.
So University of Alabama, Georgia, when those camps were put on, I was the face and the guy behind that. So a lot
Very
of fun.
cool.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. So so you understand how the real world works as far as making
Yes.
money and that.
Yes.
So yeah. And then so we'll move on to the next one, and that's health. Obviously, it's related to what you were doing. Probably could be no better expert in terms of talking about our physical health and our mental health. And every time we talk, always seems to be, sharing different things that we're doing. But yeah, tell me about, health and the things that you're doing now and how important that is on both mental and physical.
So I got to start off with the mental health. And I know a couple of podcasts ago, you talked about that, and maybe we've all ran up against this, but I also suffer from depression, right? Trying to find my identity. So, you can work out and kind of go through the motions, but you're just going through the motions. I think they need to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I believe that a lot of times we are a product of our environment. I think we die of some of the same things, not because it's hereditary, but we have some of the same habits. We eat the same foods. We deal with stress the same way. And there's outlets to get help, but we don't do it. So we stay kind of behind. So me being an ex-athlete, son being an athlete, family athletics, right? I didn't follow that path. I did, but I wasn't there very long. But my point is that fall from that was depressing. I had to find my identity. I love to compete.
Yeah.
And
You're
I'm
definitely
glad I'm in the
competitive,
industry that I'm in right now because I can do that. So with that, I've kind of got that on track. So for me, again, from a health standpoint, it's not the vanity anymore. A little bit in there, but I want to be healthy. When I travel, I see guys that are my age and a little bit younger, and they're on 4 or 5 medicines.
Yep.
They're in a wheelchair, and I don't say it in a bad way, but I only wonder, could they have treated their body better for that quality of life, right? So you guys talked about last week about delaying that gratification. I'm going to go ahead and get it done. I do hot yoga every day, but also in the morning, I'm on the track.
Yeah.
So,
it's great stuff. And like I said, I also know you had a health scare not that many years ago, right? So
yes.
it was kind of one of those awakenings when,
Yes.
So
yes.
yeah. What was that? Was it heart or was it,
no, it was testicular related, and just had another one March 3rd of 2023.
Wow.
Life-changing, right? So you kind of hit a fork in the road.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a saying, but I said it and said it to my daughter. I'm going to get fit or die trying.
That's great.
But I had to address it, confront it, and I was hopeless, but there were some things that I could do. So I encourage everybody on a minimum annually, get a physical, get checked out. But I'm doing well from that.
Good stuff. So next one is relationship with others, right? And this is a big one because it's not just it's others. And typically when I say that, I break that into 2 categories: relationship with women, which of course is our grandmothers, our aunties, our mothers, our daughters. All 3 of us have daughters, so that's something in common, right? Women in general, it is a thing, and it's about being self-aware, right, Mark? We use that a lot. And then also the different relationship with men, meaning being our grandfathers, our fathers, our uncles. And again, we're going to get a lot into that later because it's so related to what we're going to talk about today. But yeah, just what are your thoughts in general about, relationship with women and men, and what have you learned over the years?
Wow. That's a great question. Great lead in. I can honestly say my day starts with the thought of my daughter. That inspires me. So when I was sick in 2005, again in 2023, right? Her love for me, her commitment to me drove me, because it's not just about me, right? So that's just next, right? My mother and my grandmother, both of them have passed on, but I think their love and well-wish for me was so important to shape me and gave me that belief that, Carl, you know what? Put your mind to it. You can do it. On the male side of things, the father, it's weird, and I'm sure my father's going to hear this too, but I'm no longer approval seeking from them. And for the longest, that ruled me. He ruled everything that I did every single day.
Hey,
right?
that's
You
part
want
of
that.
being a son, right? Yeah.
Right. And and being the oldest, right? So yeah, so that one for me is different. And then being a father, I think every father wants to be better than his father and wants to be the best for his son. I take that seriously, so I do that on purpose too. So as a father and now even a grandfather, I do things every single day to make sure that I'm connected. But that's where my I know I'm stumbling on the word, but that's where my energy goes.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And Mark, you come in on this one, right? We talk about our daughters often. The relationship with our daughters, if that's right, then life gets right. When that's off, then everything is off, right? Mark,
Sure.
you've mentioned this before.
I just reached out to my daughters this morning because it felt like I hadn't talked to them in a while, and it's that thing going on with my younger brother that you know about, Jim, and I can certainly talk about it if we'd like to. But Carl, just to give you some, I mean, you might have heard this on one of our other episodes, but I went through a pretty aggressive divorce some years back, and I ended up raising my kids by myself. So I was mother and father to my daughters when they were teenagers, and you talk about learning things about communication, man. I think I've always been a pretty good listener, but they made me a much better listener, and that's come in handy in life.
Yeah, Mark, I'm really glad you mentioned it. The more I think about it, we need them as much as they need us, right? But they do need us, and we need them. But we learn a lot from our daughters. They make us better. They make us relevant.
I agree.
And same with all women. But yeah, like I said, that could be a whole podcast in its own. So this is it's always everyone's a big one based on what's going on in life. But there's something you said to me years ago about money. We're going to get into this later too, but yeah, just give me your relationship about money. And I'm going to quote you later, but I'm gonna let you go on this one. But we believe that there really is there's a relationship with money, right? And there's two areas. You either have an abundance mentality about money or scarcity. And there's no wrong. Remember, there's no wrong or right answer here, right? This is just something that comes from either your childhood or something that's gone on in life. And I don't want to quote you, but I remember years ago you told me about really what it is always about money. It's less about different groups of people than it is about groups of people with financial wherewithal or lack of, right? So just give me your 5 minutes or 3 minutes about money.
Wow, that's so broad. So I think through time we're all liars because we all grow and we all change, right? We look at it one way. I think it depends on the season that you're in, right? So when you're in 20s, you look at it one way, 30s, 40s, 50s, not 60 yet. I'm sure you can speak to that, Mark. That's my first jab at you.
We're knocking on the door, right, Carl? We're right there.
I know. But so for me right now, it's not holding things so tight, right? Money is seed. Where I used to hold on to it and want to see the numbers grow, I'm not a slave to money anymore. Now I want to be a good steward of it, but I'm not a slave to it. I'm not holding on to it. I'm not hoarding it. I want to be open, and I am okay with paying for value, and that's what I chase. I think what Jim was talking about, we've had some conversations over the years where things were divided or they come off to be that way, right? So I think a lot of times we look at our skin color, our ethnicity, and we put that in the corner and say, hey, they're that way. This is how they do money. This is where they do this. This is where they do that. And over the years, I've blown holes in it. And I've blown holes in people, not blown holes in people, but
you could be kind of ahead of your
challenged.
time about financial literacy and about the importance of financial. You were talking about this years ago, but keep going. I don't want to interrupt you, but yeah.
No, but it's important for us to open up the conversation.
Yeah.
So I think you said on one of your podcasts, if you're white and you're this and that, then you get a pass and this and that. And I think it's okay. But if we're going to have a club, right? What I love about this is the imperfect. It's a club.
Yeah.
Right. So not everybody needs to hear about this. Not everybody's in.
Not everybody belongs in the club, right?
Yeah, we need to be able to open up and talk about it. So I subscribe to the mindset of and I think you talked about equity and inclusion.
Yeah.
Right. My road to hoe is my road to hoe. And no, it's not fair. It's never been fair. I don't believe it's going to be fair, but I'm going to fight for the opportunity. And once I get it, I'm going to make the best of it. So my kids, and I'll tell you this, and hopefully it stays in the club too. There's an inside joke with my kids. And I told them, I said, you guys can drop me in the middle of a jungle, buck ass naked. You're going to see me in a week with a chinchilla coat on, a leopard hat, 10 pounds heavier, because I'm going to eat their ass up. So whatever you give me,
that's right,
I'm going to take. So from a money standpoint, if I want something, if that's my desire, I figure out a way to get it.
Yeah.
I'll shoot a bullseye, an arrow, and shoot a bullseye around it. And I think we miss that. We look for excuses or for reasons why we can't. I'm going to try. I'm going to give it my best. And I haven't failed. Yes, you can tell me about those obstacles. I'm not subscribing to that. So money to me, what's your goal? What is it you want to do? All right, let's figure out a way to go do it.
Yeah.
Go make it happen.
Again, it's the great. I've learned a lot talking about that and sports. So anyway, so now we're into it, Mark. We're into the topic of the day, which is worldview. And in worldview, we have two areas, right? We have politics, which I'll let Mark handle that when we get to it. But I'm going to start off with reintroducing Carl Lane, because when it comes to childhood, we've got a little bit in common, right, Carl? But before we get into our past, we also talk about we're made up of four people. Everybody is, right? And that's our four grandparents. So if you were to talk about your four grandparents, I know the one I'm going to talk about is the one that, that because I know your cousins and so on. But yeah, to tell us about your other two before we get to your last name and the Lane name and what that means in a lot of ways. But tell us about your other three grandparents.
Okay.
A little bit and where they're from. And again, this is just a quick
Get
an idea of who you are and where you're from, right?
Sure. Yeah. So my mother's parents, I called them May and Papa. My grandmother was from Oklahoma, very strong Indian descent. Learned a lot about Oklahoma and about that time. My grandfather was from Fort Smith, Arkansas, and he moved from Fort Smith to California because of just depression, hope, a better life, right?
I didn't know that. Interesting. And that's how they ended up in the Bay Area.
Yeah, moved there in 42 to Seaport. It was interesting because back in those days, they talked about there was gold in those hills, right? So you want to go there, mining, military, just a lot of opportunities. So he went there. So my grandfather was always an out-of-the-box thinker.
Yeah.
So everybody did things one way. He says, okay, how can I step aside and make some money off of that?
This is your mom's side right now. Your mom's side or dad's side?
My mom's side.
Got it. Yeah, got it.
So
you had a relation with him then. You got to know him before.
Oh, very well. Very well. I would even say there was a time in my life he's my best friend.
Wow, that's really cool.
Taught me how to golf in the 4th grade. So he showed me a lot of things from an affluent standpoint and gave me hope and would go out and did it. He drove a Cadillac. He was sharp dresser. Always had money.
But a self-made man, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Owned a couple of barbershops. And
entrepreneur. Interesting.
Yeah, he was an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Here in the Bay Area?
Yeah, he was in Oakland.
Okay. Yeah. So and where were you born again?
I was born in Oakland.
Yeah, same here. So
Providence Hospital, October 1st, 1965.
Yeah. That's which hospital?
Providence.
Providence. I was born in Kaiser, Oakland.
Okay. Right around the corner.
Yeah, right around the corner.
Right around the corner.
So your other grandparents, and then so you had obviously the Lane name, and I'll kind of set you up. But how about your grandmother? Your grandmother in that side, did you have a relationship with her?
I did. Called her granny. So her husband, my grandfather, Pawpaw, he died in 71 or 72. Didn't know him real well, but my grandmother, I did. She suffered from diabetes for some years, and I don't say that in a bad way, but she didn't drive, she didn't do a lot, so she needed some assistance to kind of help her with some of the peripherals. I think if I would say that in front of her now, she would probably say, no, I didn't. She can do everything. But as a family, she was the matriarch, and we made sure she was okay. So
very cool.
For a little while, I think she cleaned some houses when I was young, but for the most part, she was at home. And any holiday, any time off that we had, that's where we go be with her.
That's good. So yes, I'll get to this one. So I think I mentioned to you, Mark. So the last name Lane, your uncle was MacArthur Lane, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yes.
that was the famous MacArthur Lane, obviously NFL. Was Kansas City Chiefs? Is that what he was?
Kansas City Chiefs, St. Louis Cardinals, and Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
Played
So
11 years.
that was his uncle, and then his cousin was Eric Lane, played for the Seattle Seahawks
7 years
back in the day, and then he was at Hayward High before I was, and then he had another cousin that played football and so on. So that gives you kind of a background. He also I'll mention this. Yeah, you have a lot of professional athletes in
Sure.
your heritage, let's just say, and I'll get to one of those, which is his son. So then, but yeah, so the way I break up life is I call it 10-year increments, right? 0 to 10, 0 to 15, 15 to 20, and so on. So obviously the 0 to 10 was in Oakland. I didn't know you then. We meet around we're about 14, 15 years old, right?
14.
And 14, yeah. So Carl and I started playing freshman football together, and we were co-captains together. So that was kind of cool, right? We were just learning the game, but we had a friendship, and they made us both the captains as co-captains. And then Carl you went away for a minute, and I don't know the story, but you were at Hayward High your freshman year, and then you went away. So I kind of lost my friend, but we also lost a great football player. But you went away for a minute, and then came back our senior year, and then we were co-captains again our senior year. So it was really cool.
Yes. Yes.
But
yes.
Yeah, what happened for that minute? Your parents split up or something? What happened?
No. So I came to Hayward High in the 9th grade for a myriad of reasons. Part my father, part I wanted to play football. I wanted to play Pop Warner football, but we got out to the Alameda Warriors too late, so I couldn't do it, but I wanted to play. I had cousins playing, and it was just kind of the thing to do, right? So came there in 9th grade, and, we won the state championship there. And really, my Uncle Mac was not a Coach Clark fan. And Coach Clark was the man. So I think there was some little kind of family feuding. So being in Hayward, coming from Oakland, it was just different. So actually, after my 9th grade year, I went back to Skyline High School, which is where I lived. So I went to Skyline, and Coach Fardella is he's an Italian guy, great guy.
Yeah.
And I remember he said, I'm only going to let two guys play varsity football. So I'm thinking, I played at Hayward High. I'll do that, right? And anyway, these other two guys he brought up, and clearly, I was better than both those guys, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, you know what? I won't play. So that's fine. So he says, well, you can play JV. And Fardella actually knew Coach Clark. They had some conversations. I just won't play at all. So I ended up coming back to Hayward High. So I ended up coming back my junior year.
So I knew it was for some reason, but in it. So then in your 20s, he also plays Division I college football. So he gets Carl runs 1,000 yards. I remember that year because we were co-captains. You were the MVP offensive player. I was the MVP defensive player. You had 1,000 yards, and then you could go on and play college football at Oregon, right?
Right. Yeah. Oregon State.
I remember because I remember watching you play. I visited you against the Cal game, and you had a good game.
I remember that.
Yeah, and that was that. And then after that, you go on, in your 20s and 30s and start having got married. I know your wife. She went to Hayward High, and then have kids, which is also kind of special. So I want to hear a little bit about your kids. But my mom delivered at least 2 of your kids, I think. Right.
Right.
My mom worked in labor delivery, Kaiser Hayward, and delivered your son Braxton, which then also went on to become a professional athlete. Right.
Yes. Texas Rangers.
Yes. Texas Rangers. Yeah. Which was so that's kind of cool. So yeah, just give me an idea about that. Yeah, it says a lot about you and your childhood. But all right, Mark, let's get into the show now, or as far as the worldview. So let's start.
Let me just ask you something. This is a long shot, but our friend Jeff Otis played baseball at Oregon State, and he's about your age. you know the name
Is it-
Jeff Otis?
That's
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
remember, Carl played football, Oregon. He didn't play
I know,
baseball.
Yeah.
but hey,
Yeah.
college athletes
That's
are
true. That's true.
often cross-pollinating from
But you're
sport
right.
to
They were
sport.
about the same time, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, hey, and we didn't go to class that often, so yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure I probably do.
Yeah.
The other thing that as I've never been as passive a listener in this podcast, and it's very interesting strategically. It's so interesting how many we're like middle-aged men, right? And we all have these transformative moments, these things we bump into, whether it's a medical challenge or the kids move out, or
Right.
somebody passes away, and we're all the same. It's all the same. Our stories are different, but they're all the same at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, at
I
that our age, we're also known to embellish stories, like the fish stories, right? Every time you sell them, the fish gets bigger every year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've got
You know
those.
what's crazy, Jim, and you mentioned the yards. My rear views really don't work as well as I thought that they would. I think maybe 10 years ago they did, but they don't. I'm so, and thank you so much for having this platform, right? So I think, at least for me coming on, I want to get more people to listen because of the content. Me and you had a conversation, and it I don't think I teared up, but I definitely got emotional because we're so much alike. When we talked about, we don't need to be in the foreground anymore. We're okay.
Yeah.
Right. We want to be supportive. We want our kids to have a life and be healthy and be good, upstanding citizens. Right. And we can grow off in the sunset and have podcasts like this, or travel or do something. So this is just exciting. And I'm going to thank you and Mark now, and probably again, maybe a couple times before we
Yeah,
end,
no,
but
appreciate that. We talk about, there's a quote, it talks about what the world needs more than ever before now is wisdom, right? It's not that we have all the answers. We don't know, but the world does need wisdom. That's people that are willing to give their life experiences for the better good of others. And like you said, it's a nice thing about becoming this stage in our life. It's not of course, we always have an ego, but it's not just the ego. And that was it. And again, we're going to talk about worldview, but our childhoods, these little things that happen in that 2 or 3 year period that we grew up together, it just changed our whole perspective of life, right? I remember we talking about laps. I remember I was we were practicing, and I hit you on it was a practice play, and here I'm captain of the team, and the coach loses his shit. Coach Clark is talking about, you mentioned Coach Clark. He loses his shit because I hit obviously the best running back at the time in the East Bay, right? On a practice play. The fucking guy maybe running like 10 laps or something like that, right? Just why everybody watched. I don't know if you were laughing or crying, but
I was
I'll never
laughing.
forget that. Remember that? But that's you
I
learn,
do
right?
remember that.
These little things you learn in life about what and what not to do. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Before we go on, I got to say something. I think it's important because we touched on a little bit about when we met, and then you didn't mention my name, which I'm neither here nor there. On a couple of podcasts, when I came to your house the first time, I think it's important to know that when we talked about from 0 to 10, 10 to 15, from 0 to 10, at 4 to 5 years old in Oakland, California, my first, I won't say he was my best friend, but a good friend of mine was Huey P. Newton, his son. So I got a chance not only to be part of that.
Just so the other listeners know who that is. You know who that is, Mark? You know who he's talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Just mention it just so we know. Yeah.
Leader of the Black Panther. And I say that too, to give context and our listeners that coming to where we are, for some, you can call it a long road, a hard road, but it was a road. But I think as we come together, I'll say this, and I don't talk to Jim very much, but he's one of my best friends, right? And that has stood the test of time because of situations like this, where we can come together, not ego, but out of love for the betterment of others. So I feel like a co-captain or a tri-captain right now, opening up, inviting people in so you can be comfortable, so we can get good at what we need to be good at, right? And that's going to take everybody. So I'm available for that. But I use that as an example is because it could have been very I could have been very easily militant. I could have taken the messages wrong. A lot of times when we read history or we hear about things, we hear a part of it. It's the perception. It's not all of it. It's not the reality. The reality is that love and working together, being honest and being open, we can get along. So we can talk about being divisive. Let's set that aside. What are our commonalities? And man, we can do some great things.
I couldn't. Thank you so much, Carl, for just coming in on that 0 to 10. Because, like you said, that's the kind of the foundation, and then
huge,
and then the 10 to 15. I remember you even sharing a story coming over to my house for the first time, and how much that changed your outlook about life and people. Right?
Yeah.
Share that with
yes.
us.
Yes, and for the home to be open, really open, not tiptoeing, not. You know, he really don't want me here. It wasn't dutiful. And man, mi casa su casa. It's a great feeling. A great feeling. Never forget.
Tell us about that a little bit, just from your perspective, at a 15-year-old mind, right? You were just telling me that when you're in Oakland, it was just different. It was just a different experiences. Like,
well, even the neighborhood, just overall, it's just different. So I think your spidey senses are tingling, right? So it's kind of like in Coming to America when he's going around and taking cigars, whatever. What, I can have it? What, I can do this? But to come to a house where it's truly open. So mind you, at 15, as close as we were, it was a little bit different. Is I got a chance to meet your mom and dad. Your mom was very personable to me. Your dad was very respectful. Didn't have a whole lot of words to say.
Yeah, that's who he was, though, right?
It's who he was. So everything I've ever did with you, it added up. So to come there, to go outside, to see the pool. Hey man, you want something to drink? Yeah, some water. You don't want no juice? Juice. If that for the, it was open. It was genuine. So that was big for me.
And it was just different, right? We were growing up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you said it earlier. It's like, hey man, he's just my friend. You're right. I thought that, I felt that, but you look for the shoe to drop. You look for something. Okay, yep, there it is. It didn't happen because it wasn't there.
Mark, come in on this one about, just again, since we're on this topic, well, we'll just drop the bomb about DEI. What are your thoughts about that now, that from your perspective, right? From again, that's all that matters right now. That's what this is about. It's about
I got a lot, and it's definitely and I think in every podcast I've listened to you guys, I definitely don't subscribe to your ideology. It's just different. I think it's different from my lens. I think that I think you have to call it out because I think it's needed from some standpoint, from a diversity standpoint.
That's
because
important.
The playing field hasn't.
Yeah.
Well, I think the playing field hasn't been level for a lot of underserved communities, so there's no hope, right? So by calling diversity out, calling people, saying that it's available for them, it needs to be cleaned up. It's not kind of like affirmative action. It's not the answer. But I do think we need to bring some attention to that. I think the history as we know it right now, and you guys talked about King or Malcolm X. Right? Are you reading it from books, or are you reading it, or are you hearing it for people that live that life? Because the two never, 100%. Since I moved to the South, it's been totally different. Right? So we talk about MLK and we talk about his speeches. First of all, he was a hated man by most people, but there's pieces of his speeches and what he stood for that doesn't come out.
I didn't know that. Did you know that, Mark? That that wasn't, I didn't get that version of it. You know,
that he was a hated man.
Yeah.
By many.
Oh yeah.
Both groups, both sides. No.
Oh yeah. Both sides.
Interesting.
And think about this, in the 60s, mid 60s, when the Black Panther was starting, they were by any means necessary. Same with Malcolm X. Yeah. No, we're not gonna turn the cheek and be nonviolent. Yeah. I'm gonna meet resistance with resistance. Oh, you come at me, I'm getting at that ass.
Yeah.
So it's different. And then you have.
Go ahead, Carl.
No, go ahead.
No, I totally, your point totally resonates with me. I mean, we spend our lives, if we're good people, trying to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person that we're talking with. But there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. Empathy is a lived experience. Sympathy is a kind, gesture, and understanding. And my thing with DEI, because I've been in the career hiring space my whole life, right? My thing with DEI, and I think you were alluding to this, is those words are fine, right? What do they mean, right? And implementing a system, just slapping a system of any kind onto a fully formed group of adults that all have different worldviews, all had different childhoods, all had different aspirations, that's going to break. That's not sustainable. It's a false way to do that. My contention in the last one was, if people are not getting equal opportunities in neighborhoods and communities, to me, that needs to be addressed very early on. That needs to be addressed inside the family, inside the educational system, inside the communities. Doing it in people's 20s and 30s and 40s, you're just gonna create arguments. Is that your view of that?
So no,
Okay.
it's not. One of the great things you do, Mark, on a lot of the podcasts is that you will define words.
Mm-hmm.
You'll give the definition. When you talked about DEI last week, I think the word you used was laughable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it can be, because I think it means something different to different communities.
Mm-hmm.
So to say it's laughable to some communities may be a slap in the face. However, the way you describe it, I can see that, but not applicable, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
for everybody.
Yeah, it's like I tell this to my daughters when they want to talk to me about a particularly polarizing female topic like abortion or women's rights or feminism. I always say to them, okay, first thing we do is we drop it on the table. What does that mean? Because if you're just, especially like the word feminism, right? If that means equal opportunity for men and women, then I'm a feminist, right? But we really, really, as a society, in my estimation, and this is a worldview issue, right? We don't use words properly, or we often use the wrong words, or we presume the other person has the same understanding of that word as we do.
Or same experiences in life, which with Carl's point, that's why I really appreciate you bringing it out this way, Carl. I said, we don't want to agree on everything. We learn from each other by getting different perspectives, right? And that's why I appreciate you sharing us with this. But you're right. With some of these changes, they have to be made at a larger scale in order to even out the playing field, so there are opportunities. And I think that we've made some pretty good progress, especially since 1965, right? Since we've been born. But no, I really value what you're saying. Is like, yeah, that it's, if you don't have a level playing field, how can you expect it to be a fair game? And worst thing, the worst, there's only one thing worse than no hope, and that's false hope, right?
Yeah.
And if you have an unlevel playing field, you have an unfair advantage. And I think it's something we do forget about, right, Mark? We as in, a different group that doesn't have the same experiences. So
yeah, my experience is, we were joking about this last time when I said there was, we had a black guy on the team. There was one there was one black family.
Said to him. That's good, Mark. Right? Yeah, one.
It's one.
But fortunately for me, my parents were good people. They weren't prejudiced, and I played sports, and sports levels the playing field, man. I don't care what anybody looks like. I don't give a shit. I want the best guys,
Yes, Carl, talk about that. Yeah, because you're definitely an athlete. You're a Division I athlete. Talk to me about sports and that.
Yeah, you talked about that the other day too, Mark. And you were playing basketball with you, the only white guy, and you tomahawked, dunked. I'm like, okay, tomahawk. I ain't heard that word in a long time, but you're right. When it comes to winning, by any means necessary, right? That I won't say it levels the playing field, but it gives you an opportunity to show, and that's what you want. So for me, even on college football, I remember my thought, there's 22 positions. I just want one of them. I started at running back. I've snapped for field goals, for punts. I've kicked, I've done it all. Because I wanted to play, right? I wanted to play. So I think it mirrors, at least for me, it mirrors the sports world. Let's get down. Let's mano y mano. Let's get after it. And to me, that's going to show. And sometimes even when you are better, it doesn't come out. There's a lesson in that too. But it's a long game. I'm here for the long game.
Yeah.
So let's
carry on with this worldview. So that can I kind of cover the childhood, and then the other two, again, the subcategories of worldview is childhood, and then this particular area, it's heritage. We've covered that pretty well, right? Heritage has a lot to do with it. How about spirituality? What are your thoughts on your worldview based on your spirituality, right? As far as faith and so on and so on. What are your thoughts about that? Yeah.
Man, that's evolved a lot. I think from what I was taught, there was one way. This is the right way. Grab onto this. I'm so far away and respectful for other people. I think there's a lot of ways, not a lot of ways. There are, I respect the ways and thoughts of others as it pertains to religion or being relational. So
did you grow up in a church? Was that part of your childhood at all?
Not too much of my childhood. In my late teenage years, it was.
Yeah. What type of church?
It was a non-denominational Pentecostal church that I went to before I left to Oregon, and then on campus there were some Christian ministries that I dabbled in and got involved with some.
Yeah, and
definitely different.
Yeah. And you think that was helpful to get to that, or how much of that influences you today?
Oh, yes, it was helpful because I believe I uncovered some things. There were some truths growing up that were repressed. I just never asked. Right? There's some things that happened. So if someone was if Christianity and Jesus is the only way, and we're here. So if somebody is in a third world country or a Muslim area, are they being penalized because they live there? Oh, you don't want to answer that. Right? So that for me, right, when you saw the Last Supper and you see that, man, I don't see no black people there. I couldn't ask that question. Right? Those are some of the things that are
the dots.
Yeah, those are for me. Those are real dots for me, but nobody could answer them. Yeah. So as I've grown older, I'm unapologetic about those questions. I still don't have those answers, but I know that money rules a lot, greed rules a lot. So I'm just careful.
Yeah,
I'm gonna love you for you, and I'm gonna respect that. But yeah, it's helped me out a heck of a lot.
Good stuff. So, all right, the next one though. So now we're gonna go from worldview to politics. And then we break that up into two subcategories, conservative and liberal, basically red and blue, right? Typically Democrat, Republican. I'm kind of like you on the spiritual and a lot of these. I reside in the middle, even on, obviously I'm Catholic, so I was baptized, but also learned, the Catholic Church has done some good. They've also done a lot of bad. So like a lot of groups, but in with the politics too, I openly say I'm a registered independent, but I probably lean more towards Mark's side of the right side of things. And what are your thoughts about your worldview in politics? And
so not saying preparing for this, but thinking about this, right? When you send me the will, and thank you for sending the will too. I'm going through it, right? And then I go back and look and says, man, what did he give me? That would be it, right? So it was interesting because I think one of our conversations we had, Mark, you talked about the side you were on and the reason why, and I'm sitting there. I remember where I was on this walk, and I'm like, that shit don't fly with me, right? But it's okay because I respect that.
It is what we want, right, Mark? We
this is fascinating.
But I would say this, and then Jim made me smile. He said, I'm a registered independent. I'm like, I am too.
So, are you really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I am. So I'll tell you how I view it, how I talk about it to other people, because I get this quite often. So there's two schools of thought in my mind. There's a democratic way, if you want to paint the fence that way, and they believe that a high tide raises all boats. There's a Republican way, if you want to paint the fence, from some people that I talk to, that says, hey, the harder I work, the more money I should be able to make. Screw them people who don't want to do it. Screw them systems and this and that. Okay. So I'm of the mindset, and I never say I'm going to lean towards either side. I will say, are you on the side of right, or are you on the side of wrong? Pick a side. And until I listen to the person presenting, I hold that close. I don't pick a side. So a right person that I believe in could be a Republican, that's where I'm voting. Same on the Democratic side, that's what I'm going to vote. So I really take politics and bring it back to the community, right? What are you doing in the community? Because a lot of this peripheral stuff is just chatter. I'm not sure how long it's been for you right now that you're off YouTube. I love that I'm not going into that channel and being inoculated with all everybody
24
else's
days, by the way,
views.
24 days clean.
Wow.
Yes. But so for me, I can't, but what's going on in my community, right?
Yeah.
There's the neighborhood that I live in. I do some
that's
stuff with
huge.
the local schools.
Yeah.
I do some things in the community. I do help some elderly people or some people that are underserved. That's where my heart is, and that's where my attention is. This big stuff, it's there. I think there's something behind it. It doesn't have my best interest. I think it buys an interest. So I'm really in the middle. So I can't say that I lean one way or the other.
Yeah. I also thought it was interesting how you grabbed on when I talk about K through 12, right? How we prepared them. So you mentioned, repeat the quote that the way you heard it from me, but I was really interested in how you grabbed onto that about my description of capitalism versus socialism.
Ooh, yeah, and I've used that because I've talked to a couple of schools too. So and I gave
repeat
you
the quote just so the listeners hear. You've heard me say it before, Mark.
Where you were talking about that, when you come out of high school, you're in that fork in the road. Very quickly, you come out of a socialism.
Yeah, the K through 12 educational system of the United States of America basically is a socialist system.
It is.
That then when they're 18 years old and that last whistle blows, or the last bell rings, they're releasing the capitalism, and they wonder why they can't survive, right?
We're not prepared for it. It's polarizing.
Yeah.
Right. I think so. First of all, if you want to go just to K through 12, my thoughts on that is I think that it is polarizing. I think that our ideas, our ingenuities, things that we want to do, we're told how to think, how to go about it, how to feed this system. Yeah. And we put so much on grades and A's and go overboard, man. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to push it, but I'm going to have a quality of life too. Man, I'm so proud of you for what you're doing. I can remember you back in school talking, and you got a sander sanding something, right? Because you're working on something, but that was your craft, and you got great. There's probably nobody better. You got great at your craft. You weren't worried about that. So we can talk about it. You mentioned being dyslexic. So is it a disability, or is it
an extra ability? It's a choice, right? I had to make that decision. You're right. It's definitely a disability. It makes some things difficult, but also there's some other things you get, some bonuses you get too. So it's like, but that applies to everything in life, right?
And it does. So Mark, to bring it in full context, I had a stuttering problem, and Jim said, "Hey man, I forgot that." So I started saying, right? You kind of laugh, right? Because the humor is there, but I did, and I was self-conscious about it. I have braces now. Right? Because my teeth were crooked. So whatever those things were, and not again from vanity standpoint, my presentation is very, very important to me. I give respect. I expect it back. And
I think the last thing too, course, I've talked about it before, but the alumni, right, that the
Mhm.
Hayward High Football Alumni, my nonprofit, we've that mission, started as one thing, it's evolved to something else. Carl's gonna help me get involved in that, and even, but the mission really was prepare those the
Young
Hayward
athletes.
it was the high school players, but really was preparing them for the last whistle
Mhm.
and the last bell and the last whistle. When that last whistle blows your senior year, it's over. Your life changes completely at that moment, right? You go from hero to zero. Basketball season starts immediately, and they
Yeah.
forget about you as you're
Hey.
walking off the field, right? The cheerleaders start jumping
Yeah.
for a whole other team, and then that bell rings in June, and you're like, wow, now what do I do, right?
It's real.
It's
So
real.
Jim, I'm working with the biggest high school in Charlotte. I met with them last Thursday, and one of the things that I talked about is community involvement, and because we're doing a couple of things to raise some funds, and I just said, a byproduct of this is that when your tenure at high school is over, you have an open Rolodex of power in the community. So we need to be able to socialize these kids and get them out. We need to be able to give them some skills. They need to meet.
Yeah.
They can identify.
Yeah.
People like me, they can identify what I've been through. But if we don't give them that channel, they don't get it.
Yeah.
The great thing about this podcast is we'll get fathers and grandfathers on here too that will recognize it,
Yeah.
and hopefully they'll take it and be a good steward of it to be able to pay it forward.
Yeah.
That's the type of club I want to be a part of.
Yeah.
Give me
Well,
the tool.
I appreciate that. That's a good way to wrap up too. Again, I think, the building men for others, we're basically taking these young men and really focusing on them become men, because they're boys that need, like all of us need, right? Guidance, role models, somebody have conversations with them. If we want to make the world better, it's going to start with our young men, and then how they treat our daughters, how they treat our mothers, and that it's a real important part of this. We just happen to be fortunate that we had sports that guided us along the ways with good coaches like our freshman coach Jeff Kincan and all those.
Yeah.
Think about the impact that has on us later on in life, right? And the disciplines and all the different things. So that's what it's about. But
you're right. Hey, Mark, I got to throw this in. I know we're closing here. And we didn't talk about it, but Jim said something to me. I don't remember what context he said, but if somebody, I don't know, from Hayward High or part of this program calls me, I want to pick up. If I can't pick up, I want to get back. And one thing Jim has always done is he's kept his word, right? That means something. And he doesn't always give his word, right? He's not always going to say he's going to. I think he's careful. He knows that. But you can count on him, right? And as far as being part of this club, I want to be a part of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Oh, listen,
and I can count on you. Yeah.
Love having you, Carl. I think there's quite a few things that we could expand on in future conversations, and I look forward to those. It's just that, you can't, none of us can look at somebody else and have a brief interaction with them and think we have any understanding of who they are, and depending, it doesn't matter what they look like, how old they are, what gender they are, doesn't matter. And there's also no reason that we have to agree on everything. Absolutely none. And to be able to get along with someone that has a different point of view from yourself or myself, that's kind of one of the goals, right? We got to get back to that. Like, let's have conversations about things where you don't agree with me or I don't agree with you. And then and occasionally one of us might move the other's position, but that's not the goal of the conversation. The goal of the conversation is, how can I help you? How can I help you? What would you like to know from me? So anyway.
Good way to wrap it up, Mark, until next week. But thanks, Carl. Thank you so much.
Carl, thanks for coming on, man.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.